This is a really interesting opportunity to chat about the topic that I think is at the front of everyone's mind these days, which is how do we unleash human adaptability during times of crisis, which we definitely are in. My name is Mary Larsen, and I'm a partner at MNP, and I'm going to be talking to Andrew D'Souza today, who's the co-founder of Clearbanc. And just a quick 5-second spiel on who MNP is. We are a leading national accounting, tax, and business consulting firm in Canada. We're the fastest growing services firm in the country. And at MNP, we really understand that our clients work in hyper-competitive, rapidly changing technology environments, and understand that what our clients need is really advisors who are nimble, who care about them, and who are able to mobilize fresh ideas and resources to address shifting circumstances. And we're very excited to talk to Andrew today as someone who is right out there in the front lines. And Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself and explain a little bit about Clearbanc?
Sure. Thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for joining. So my name is Andrew D'Souza. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called Clearbanc. We've been around for about 5 years. We're a financial technology company and an investor in probably one of the largest investors in digital commerce businesses. So, e-commerce brands, consumer brands, and B2B companies, but businesses that sell online to their customers. They find their customers online. They process payments online. And what we've done, we've put out about $1 billion to about almost 3,000 businesses around the world on a non-equity and non-debt basis. We've designed a new instrument that really is designed to fund companies for repeatable growth, and we get paid out of the revenue that those companies create. And we started the company really based on the need that we saw. I'd spent a lot of my career raising capital previous to this and running go-to-market teams, sales and marketing businesses, and realized that the capital raising process for a lot of founders is pretty broken. It's very biased. It's very time intensive. If you didn't go to the right school or know the right person, you're very disadvantaged, no matter how good your idea is or how strong your business is. And so our mission was really to level the playing field and shift the balance of power. And we really believe that founders and business owners are what are going to change sort of a lot of the major problems we have as in society and humanity. And we want to empower them to go build the businesses that they dream of without all the pain of raising capital and giving up control or adding more risk to the business. So that's what we've been doing for the last little while and are excited to continue.
Well, you've actually taken my first question was in fact about purpose. And I think what you've described, what's very interesting these days is that a lot of people are talking about the importance of purpose in organizations, and that Larry Fink, for example, saying if you haven't got a purpose, forget it. You're not going to be around for the long haul. And so when you started this, was it very clear to you and Michelle that this is what you wanted to do, was to have a purpose, and was that an explicit objective?
Yeah, it was, we started it to solve a problem that we saw in the world that we thought was a meaningful one. And it was, my own personal experience. My partner, Michelle, had sort of the opposite experience. She had bootstrapped 4 businesses and sold her last company. And then she'd been an investor on Dragon's Den, which is like the Shark Tank of Canada, for the last little while, and seen entrepreneurs, struggling with this process of raising capital. And, so we realized that we wanted to help founders. We wanted, at our core, we want to help founders win. That is sort of our innate mission. Is we think that entrepreneurs are best positioned to solve society's problems more than government, more than large institutions, and whether those problems are, climate change, whether those problems are equality, whether those problems are healthcare. We think that founders and entrepreneurs are the people that are going to solve those problems. And there's an interesting analogy. I've read that as humanity, we produce enough food to feed the world 3 times over, but we've got half the world that's starving and half the world that's obese, right? We think very much the same analogy applies to capital. We think that there's more than enough capital to fund all of the great ideas and all the ambitious entrepreneurs around the world. Our distribution systems are just, antiquated and inefficient. And so what we're really aiming to do with Clearbanc is build a more efficient distribution system to get the capital in the hands of the people that are actually, solving the problems without sort of the bureaucracy and the challenges that happen with our existing institutions.
Great. So, and I think there is a need, having incubated a tech-based business for about 3 years, which we never actually got off the ground. But one of the issues was going to be the problem that at some point we would have come to you, but we didn't get that. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is that, if COVID has created a situation where the tech sector seems to be actually uniquely positioned to take advantage of change behaviors. I mean, we all are doing a lot more online than we ever did before. And when you think about the companies that you've already supported, what do you see some of these organizations doing, not only to take advantage of the crisis, but to take care of their own people and maybe even of their customers? So what are some of the people-related things that they're doing that you think are important, or climate-related, or what other, this could be a broad range of issues.
Yeah, it's been interesting, so maybe I'll start with what we've experienced, and then I'll talk about our portfolio and our customers. So our team is a team of founders, right? So we're 200 people, but everybody has an entrepreneurial story. Everybody has their own founder story. They've either started a business or started a nonprofit, or they come from an entrepreneurial family. And so our culture was a very high energy and almost, high contact culture. We had to shift that overnight to be a remote culture and try to get that same level of energy and that same level of engagement when everybody's working from home and everybody's working in different circumstances. And that was a major adjustment for us. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned personally is just to sort of really build or try and focus on developing a greater degree of empathy for every person's situation. Because when you're all in one room and you're having a meeting, or you're having a company all hands or a town hall, you have a shared context. Everybody's in the same environment. Everybody's feeling the same energy. Everybody's got the same distractions or focus. When you're in a Zoom meeting or a Zoom conference like this is, everybody's sitting with their own situation. Some people's kids are screaming. Some people's dogs need to go out. Some people's, their air conditioning is broken. But everybody's got their own context and their own life. And then, with COVID and people having, family members that might be immunocompromised, and then just a whole additional level of anxiety that's brought on, means that we could be having a conversation, but your context around that conversation and the environment that you bring into that conversation might be very different than mine. And I think that's one of the hardest things to make that adjustment when you've been a very in-person culture, is these little sort of miscues can actually create a lot of friction, a lot of animosity among team members. And so that's probably one of the biggest things that we've experienced. And I think in our portfolio companies, the ones that have figured that out, whether it's with their employees or their customers, are the ones that have thrived through this.
One of the things that I was kind of interested in, I read over the weekend that you've launched a Clearbanc Runway, which is another way for startups to access funds for growth. And it looked to me from the outside that your decision-making algorithms have shifted a bit, and that they seem to have broadened somewhat. And I'm kind of interested to find out whether, kind of what else you're looking at when you're making your decisions about who you support. Yeah.
So we exist to help founders, be successful and win. We think capital is one way that we can do that, but at the end of the day, capital is a commodity. And what we really focus on is how do we actually empower entrepreneurs to make better decisions faster, and capital is a component of that. But it's sort of, at the end of the day, we're a technology and data company. And so, for example, when we saw the COVID hit, we recognized that most of our portfolio companies and most entrepreneurs in the world really shifted their focus from growth to survival. right? Everybody, Clearbanc included, many companies sort of said, okay, how do we make it through this? There's a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty. And so we shifted to say, look, our capital and our product had been primarily positioned as a growth accelerant. Now we're sort of saying, look, we want to actually help companies manage their cash flow, extend their runway, and figure out how to navigate the uncertainty. And so, within 10 days, I think our data science team reforecasted, built some new models, and redesigned the product to say, look, actually every month we can actually we can continue to unlock capital to make sure that you're only burning a certain amount of capital, over that month, or you're staying cash flow neutral or cash flow positive. That's one of the products that we launched. Recently, we launched a product called Valuation, which is basically just helping a company understand what their business is worth, how that changes week over week. Understanding what your business is worth can often be a huge black box that most founders only get to do a few times. Maybe when they raise external capital, when they sell their business. We wanted to just open, just pull back the curtain a little bit and help people understand what are the drivers of creating valuation. And look, we're not the absolute be all and end all, and every investor is going to value companies slightly differently, and they're going to have their own methodology, but we want to give people at least a little bit of a benchmark of how am I doing? Are the activities that I'm taking day over day, week over week, actually increasing the value of my business? Is this, passion that I've poured my blood, sweat, and tears into for the last 3-5 years, is it worth anything?
Yeah.
And we want to just give people a little bit of that sense. So that's one of many products that we've got sort of coming down the pipeline.
So you've been adapting very quickly inside Clearbanc to take it, to basically provide additional support to your clients. You mentioned something a few minutes ago that I wanted to pick up on, which is this notion of empathy and understanding where people are coming from who are, struggling to do so. How do you actually, what are some examples of things you're doing as a team internally to try to be more understanding of people's circumstances? I meant to kind of pick up on that.
Yeah. So we, when COVID first hit, we introduced a daily 5 p.m. all hands meeting over Zoom, and Michelle and I would just sort of sync up, and it was an open forum. Part of it was just sharing how our day went, right? And it was like, oh wow, we had a bad day, or we had a great day, and here's why. Here's what I'm excited about. Here's what I'm worried about. Part of it was an open forum to just ask and answer questions that people had, and just get them on the table. And it was just a touch point. I think people really missed, a bit of that social dynamic. I think it's still been hard for us to recreate the real sort of social energy that the company had, but it was just a connecting point to see everybody's faces. And then I think as it's sort of gone on, we've also realized that there's a little bit of Zoom fatigue that's happening, right? You're staring into a video screen all day, and it's straining on your eyes, and you can't really make eye contact with anybody. And when you make a joke, people don't laugh right away, or it's a little bit delayed. And there's all these sort of like little friction points that happen. And so we've tried to listen and adapt, and provide a lot more flexibility around timing. So that not we're not trying to have meetings back to back all day, 9 to 5. Started to do much more phone calls as well. So if it's not a first meeting, being okay with the fact that we might not need to we might not need to get on the camera. We can go for a walk. It's nice outside. We can just jump on a phone call. And so try to do some of those things just to understand sort of people's situation and mental health and anxiety levels, and do some of those things to improve it. But by no means have we figured it out. We're still learning, as I think most of the world is.
One of the things that related to that, do you think, I'd be interested to ask you how you would define your leadership style, and whether it's shifted over the past little while, and whether you think it's going to shift back or continue to evolve in the direction that it may have shifted in today, if that makes sense. Sorry, that was a really bad question.
No, that's great. I don't know if I've defined the leadership style. I think one of the things that I strive for is to let whoever I'm talking to, and whether that's an employee or customer or partner or new recruit, let them know that I am on their side, and I want them to win, and I want them to be successful. And that's the purpose of this interaction. It's harder to do in a remote environment, and it's harder to do in a one-to-many setting. And then just sort of, do my best to be my authentic self and just say, look, here's who I am as a person. Here's what I'm, experiencing, feeling, concerned about, excited about, and not try and sugarcoat things that are not going well, not try and dance around things or tiptoe around topics that I think are going to be uncomfortable for people to hear, and recognize that, my job as a CEO is not necessarily to always make people happy, but to make the best decision I can with the information I've got. And, in times like this, the information that you have to make a decision and the speed that you have to make decisions with, are much, much more intense than they had been in much calmer times. And so, that's one of the things that I've continued to strive to do throughout COVID. I've probably sharpened some of those things, probably tried to be a little bit more hands-on during times when people needed a little bit more direction. And now that things, now that we have a little bit more line of sight, I'm trying to pull myself back out and be a bit more strategic and just focus on the strategy and the culture and leave the team to focus on the execution. But I think that Zoom leadership or remote leadership is going to be a skill that, we're all going to have to invest in and develop, in this next decade plus. I don't think we're unlikely for it to just go back to normal. And so this is, for a lot of us, it probably feels like we're trying to lead with our hands tied behind our back. I have found that I do some of my best work when I'm in front of the team, at an all hands or a company retreat or something, and I don't have that feedback anymore. And it's hard to draw from that energy. And so, learning how to align people and inspire and communicate in a remote setting is a skill that I'm working on and developing. And I think it's going to be a skill. I'm encouraging my whole management and leadership team to continue to build that skill.
It's true. I mean, I think that one of the things that we've noticed with our clients is to have a forum in which you actually are able to debate or talk about complex issues in Zoom is really tough.
Mm-hmm.
You can only do that with a group of people sort of in person to some extent. And I think we're going to have to find some creative ways of dealing with this. One of the things I want to return back to kind of where we started with this whole idea of purpose. And Larry Fink said, going forward, there's going to be a lot more focus on society, customers and clients, family and employees. And it was very interesting. I just was talking to a senior person at BDC a couple of minutes ago, right before our conversation. And he said that in their portfolio right now, the companies that are paying attention to these things, who define purpose and who have sort of a broader set of business objectives like you do, are actually doing hugely better. I mean, just significantly better, 50% better in terms of growth, profitability, survival, et cetera. And I wondered to what extent you are feeling that going forward in terms of companies that you would choose to support, is that going to be a criterion that you're going to be looking for?
Yeah, so I think there's many layers to this. One is just in terms of talent, right? I think the caliber of people that you can hire and the level of sort of energy and enthusiasm they bring to the work is directly correlated to the purpose of the business.
Yeah.
I think the days of people just showing up and earning a wage are behind us. And I think if you want to get the best people and you want to get the most out of your best people, you have to be able to tie the purpose of the company to something that your team deeply cares about. And doing like a one-off sort of like donation or volunteer hour is not going to cut it anymore. So I think there's a talent component, but then there's also a customer component. And I think we are at a moment in time right now where we're looking around the world and we're seeing, I think every consumer and every business buyer is starting to think about things beyond just the dollars and cents and the economic impact of certain decisions. And I think we're really starting to think about the societal impact. We're starting to, whether it's inequality and anti-Black racism and social justice, whether that's environmental, whether that's health and structural sort of, inequality and access to healthcare. I think everybody's starting to think about that. And I think the companies and the brands that really authentically stand for something that is more than just profit will do better from their end customers, because their end customers are going to want to be associated with those and support those brands. So I don't think it's an option for companies to not truly at their core be able to stand up for something and reflect that in their actions. And I think those companies will do well, and I think the rest of the companies will probably be left behind.
You can actually identify those when you're looking at whether or not you're going to support someone, maybe the extent to which you'll support them.
It's interesting. We've looked through our portfolio, and we certainly have some companies that are very vocal about, and many, marginalized founders that have done incredibly well, and we try and amplify their stories, or companies that really focus on a social cause or an environmental cause, and so we do that. But so in a lot of ways, we try and all of our decision making is data driven, right? So it's technology driven, data driven. We don't apply our own bias or filter or judgment to the business or the product or the business model. All we care about is, do you have a product that customers love, and do you know how to find those customers? And if you do, we will fund you and we'll unlock that capital. Even if we don't understand your product, we wouldn't personally buy it. And I think by letting that data sort of talk, what we're starting to realize is the companies that know how to tell their story are able to get customers and get very loyal customers. And that is right. Reflected in their data and their economics. So we don't need to say, we don't necessarily even need to apply that judgment. We just see how their customers react.
That's a very interesting perspective, because in fact, that was kind of what BDC was saying to us. It's sort of you don't start with that. You basically see the results of this in how the business is doing, and it's a self-perpetuating good cycle, pretty much.
Exactly. Well, I think this is part of the challenge with most funding sources right now. Is there is if there's a human being evaluating a business plan or a business, they're bringing their inherent bias to it, right? And they're sort of saying, well, I wouldn't buy this product, or I wouldn't do business with this company for these reasons. That may be the case, but their customers might, right? And so there could be a whole other, you may not be their target market. And I think that's where there's a lot of, bias introduced, maybe not intentional, but that's what we're trying to do is sort of shift the mindset to say, look, if these businesses know how to operate, and they know how to find their customers, and their customers love their product, let's just continue to support them.
Got it. Okay. That's great. I just wondered, my last question, I think we're running up against the time constraint, is the topic of this was human adaptability during crisis. Do you see this crisis ending anytime soon? And are we going to continue to have to adapt and readapt as much as we've been over the last 6 months?
I've been fascinated and incredibly encouraged actually by the resilience that sort of, humanity has shown through this, right? I think people have figured out how to make things work. They figured out how to continue to go on doing business. They figured out how to continue to have conferences and meetings and, socialize and all of that stuff. And yeah, it's not perfect, and it's not what we were comfortable with, and it's not what we were used to, but we haven't let it stop us. And so, look, I don't know when this is going to end. But I don't think we need to wait until it ends. I think I had 6 months ago, I would have said Clearbanc would never be a remote company. And now I'm looking at it and I'm saying, productivity is way up. People are generally much happier. There's certainly some people who, we missed the social component, but it's actually allowing us. And now as we start to think about hiring people globally, our talent pool, and the group of people that our message and our value proposition resonates with is much wider. And so I'm like, actually, there are a lot of opportunities ahead of us, and there are certainly some sacrifices we've had to make and our teams have had to make, and we've got to figure out how to sort of support them through that. But I don't think we're waiting. And I think humanity overall is not waiting for things. We're just sort of rolling with things, and there's going to be continued innovation and adaptability. Now that we realize this is probably going to be with us for some period of time, I think we're going to, I'm excited and curious to see what this new future looks like. And I'm confident we'll navigate it successfully.
We will continue to adapt.
Exactly.
Andrew, this has been fabulous. I really enjoyed this, and thanks to the NCFA for hosting this. So
yeah, likewise. It was great chatting with you, Mary, and thanks to everybody who's tuned in here. This is a lot of fun.